Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Chip, and welcome into our live broadcast. I've got a friend with me today. Her name's Carrie, and she is awesome, full of awesome sauce. So, Carrie, as we let folks get logged in and clicked in and get their headsets plugged in, will you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you.
Yes, I'm like, where do I start? Um, I'm Carrie Swails, and I'm a wedding photographer. Started out shooting normal weddings. Now I specialize in offbeat people getting married, and I run other businesses on the side: blogging, teaching, speaking, educating, whatever, a whole bunch of stuff.
So you're saying that there's not a lot of downtime. You keep yourself pretty busy.
I would say I'm really bad at time management, and so there might actually be too much downtime, or maybe that's a sign I'm really good at time management.
I think it could probably be argued both ways. But if what you spend your downtime doing is working in the garden and hanging cafe lights at the crib, then nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and drinking wine while my husband cooks. So
Someday maybe I'll find a husband that I can drink wine while he cooks. No, my wife wouldn't like that very much, I don't think. Well, if it's okay, I'd love to give just a kind of a brief history of how I came to know you and kind of my first impressions. Is that all right?
yeah, that's fine.
Awesome. So, Carrie, you and I met this past year at WPPI. We've not known each other a very long time. And I love WPPI because it it makes connecting in person very attainable for folks who otherwise mightn't get the opportunity to. And I think it's super important. If I were to have frustrations or maybe annoying elements of WPPI, it's that oftentimes we humble photographers want to maybe peacock a little bit and puff up our chests and fan our tail feathers out and pretend to be all this, big, bad, amazing stuff that may or may not be real in the world. We wear clothes that we would never wear at home, and just others.
I do that a little bit.
What's that?
I wear clothes when I'm out places that I don't wear at home.
Well, I mean, wouldn't ever wear in the hometown. Maybe, that we've all seen the guy who
We like to get fancy.
we like to get fancy, but like buys the special pair of sunglasses and the Affliction or Tom Hardy shirt. Well, they're from 8 years ago, but it's like, dude, I don't think you wear that to the grocery store, and so anyway, there's a whole lot of pretense in some corners. There's a whole lot of posturing, and meeting you was a little bit of a breath of fresh air. It struck me immediately that you weren't about that noise, and there was just an authenticity and almost like oh cool, it's safe to be real in this circle of people, and that was refreshing. And I don't know if you remember this way. There was a group of maybe 5 people talking, and we met at a shoot proof event that they were hosting, and I walked up to that group, and the group had been talking for a few minutes, and I met you. And I don't know if you remember this, but the very first thing you did was introduce me to the person standing next to you. And it was, making introductions is kind of fairly common, but I took it as the notion that you didn't want anybody to be in that group who didn't also know or meet everybody else in that group. And so from that moment, when I think of Carrie, I think connector, someone who's going to build connections. And in fact, I believe that I hadn't even been home a week from that trip when I get an email in my inbox saying, "Hey, Chip, this is someone I think that you should know. Megan meet Chip, Chip meet Megan," and that has kind of been a recurring theme in our friendship. And so yeah, breath of fresh air. Thanks for that, and thanks for being you and doing things the way you do them.
I don't feel like I'm that person at all, but I was reading that to my husband because I think you'd said that to me in an email, and I was like, he thinks I'm so great. And my husband's like, well, you are kind of like that. And I was like, oh.
Well, I won't deny. I do think you're pretty great. It was at those events, you're around 10,000 people, you meet 800 of them, and you're like, I will never see this person ever again. And then there are a couple you're like, worth hanging on to, So that was kind of my take home. But as we get into this thing, I'm sure we still have some folks finding this link and joining us here. I'd like to go off script just a little bit before we get into the nuts and bolts of what I'd like to talk to you about today. And I just from following along online, I know that recently you guys made a move. You moved your home to a new place, and as I understand it, it's kind of a little distant from where you used to live, or distant from some of the amenities of where you used to live. Will you talk about the move? Tell us where you live and why you guys ended up there, and how that's going for you.
It's pretty. So when I met my husband, he worked maybe 70 hours a week. He's always worked that much ever since I met him. He was in grad school, working full time, and so like we've been together almost 10 years, and that's just the way our life has always been, where he never has days off, and he's been working toward hopefully being a full-time professor somewhere at some university for a long time. But in the meantime, I don't know if people here know how much adjunct professors make in the United States. They make usually less than a janitor does working at the same college. So he was working all these little adjunct, which is just part-time teaching. You still have to be just as qualified as a full-time professor. And you can teach a full-time class load like a full-time professor and make, if you're lucky, $12,000 a year. So he was doing that for a really long time. So he'd been applying for jobs, and it got to the point where it's like, we'll just go wherever he gets a job, because being a business owner is kind of hard, and you feel like you never know where things are going to end up anyway. So his job is probably the more stable. So he finally got a job, and it's in BFE. So
I've been through a couple of different BFE towns, and I get it. It's.
I've traveled all over the U.S. and all over the world. I've been in a lot of small towns, but I've never been in a small town that's this far away from just like civilization, where it seems like people don't even have like smartphones. People are just less connected. It's like, from the 90s. And we live an hour and a half from the nearest grocery store in Colorado, but the actual closest grocery store is an hour away in Utah. So it's a big adjustment coming from Denver and like a high stress work life, especially for my husband. He's never lived in a smaller town, to a place where it's like, if you want to go out on a Friday night, good luck. Everything's closed at 8.
That's fascinating. There are elements of that, maybe not the drive to the supermarket, but the elements of being the opportunity to be a little more disconnected and kind of a slower pace of life that I find appealing. I live a half an hour outside of the 4th, soon to be 3rd largest metropolitan area in the country, and it's there's some appeal to the simpler life sort of thing.
I was excited to move here just because, even though I knew it was going to be a struggle for my business for the first year, I was just excited because we actually like downsized. We live in a pretty small house, but it's just enough space for us. We don't need more than that. And so it's nice to just like be in a place where now my husband works like 30 hours a week on average, and he's home every day, and we get to see each other. We get to do things that like we wish we had time to do before, like cooking dinner together, or even just seeing each other on a daily basis. So it's just nice that we can kind of hang out in the backyard, and there's nothing to do around here, so you got to make your own fun.
Yeah. Well, dude, I'm happy for you. I'm excited for you guys, and I hope that this chapter for you guys is fresh for your marriage, for your business, and that he's fulfilled in his new teaching role. That's good for him.
And now, the college that's in this little town where he's working full time, they were like, you know what we need? An art professor. And my degree happens to be in art education. So what do you know? We both have jobs there now.
That I had seen something about that. That's really cool. I'm happy for you. I'm excited for you in that as well. So I guess I'm trying to picture a town big enough to have a college, but too small to have a grocery store.
Yeah, trust me, I don't get it either, but it happened.
Awesome.
It's a community college, 2-year, and all of the kids live in dorms, and all their food is trucked in, and so it's sort of more like a junior college.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. Well, if it's all right, let's go ahead and jump into kind of the meat and potatoes of our talk. There's some stuff I'm excited to dig into with you, so as a bit of a preface, my first impressions of you as someone who values authenticity, who connects people, who doesn't let pretense get in the way of what she's doing, what she's got going on. It kind of goes hand in hand in what I'd like to talk to you about a little bit today. And in fact, there were a couple of things that I've seen on your Instagram in the past couple of months that kind of fit the mold. I'm gonna read a couple of your posts if that's all right. Just not the comments or the byline or anything, but the post itself. One of them says, "In a society that profits from your self-doubt, liking yourself is a rebellious act." And this one I love because, I mean, self-doubt's so prevalent and rampant, and we're always told that what we need to look like and what our business needs to be doing by year 2 and what sort of car we're supposed to drive and that sort of thing. And especially as the father of a 14-year-old daughter, this one hits home for me, especially. And the second one, let me grab it real quick. I'm going to paraphrase this one to keep us PG. It says, "Take me as I am, or kiss my butt, eat poo, and step on Legos."
Yeah.
And that's kind of my favorite thing of the week right now, especially the step on Legos part, because that's real life. But there's kind of one of your websites, one of your outlets is called Rock Your Weird, and I love the premise there of like, hey, we've all got a little bit of weird. Don't hide it. Don't cover it up. Don't pretend it's not there. Just be you. And a lot of maybe how that manifests itself, or what you present on that platform and on your other various platforms like Photography Awesome Sauce, is very much just helping other people, like either helping them embrace who they are, helping them build their business, helping them with advice and tips and stuff like that, which maybe can be a controversial notion in some moments in our industry. So let's start with the philosophical. Why do you think it's important to cultivate an attitude of sharing within our industry, of building one another up?
Oh, well, I think maybe it's before we got into like modern times with technology where we could all kind of like be individuals and help ourselves, we relied a lot on our communities. Even as humans, we relied on our communities to help raise our children, humans were originally hunters and gatherers, and women would gather together. And I just sort of believe, I guess, that we're all better people when we all help each other out, and that when everybody has kind of an equal opportunity, our potential as a society and as a community are just greater in general. I mean, that's my husband's like, "You're a bleeding heart liberal." Yes. In terms of like liberal as like a literal definition just means a lot. And I just think the more information and sharing that you have, then you're helping out the other guy. They have more potential. There's still a truth somewhere in there where, at least in the business world, statistically, most of us aren't going to make it. Most people don't make it past the first year, let alone 5 years or 10 years. So what's the harm in taking a minute or two and giving somebody a link to something that might help them out? It's up to them to make the most of it once they have that info. I mean, does that?
Sure. So there's also kind of the notion that we're a very connected society, we're a very connected industry. Most of us operate through our websites, and we're very connected on our social media channels, and there can be the notion that, well, this person from Omaha wrote me on Facebook and wants to know what I do about X, Y, or Z, so I'll go ahead and tell them. But if this guy down the street asks me the same question, no, I'm not telling him, because I'm not going to help him be my competition. Like, this works across the industry. Do you think it works within a specific market as well?
Ooh, within a specific market? Yeah. I mean, I don't see why why not? I mean, I guess I'm a good example of, I don't really worry about everybody else being my competition because I've made my own niche for myself. So most people's clients are not my clients. I mean, 99% of the time. So I'm really not worried about whatever I'm sharing with my neighbor down the street. The only thing that I tend to like hold back and have is really respect for my time. There's only so much of my time that I can give without losing myself in there, you know? So it just, as long as it fits within my limitations of how much I can give myself, then why?
Yeah. Okay. I like that. So, it, is this kind of like always the way you've structured your life? Was this a learning experience? Was there like an epiphany, type moment that made you want to be or think or act this way?
I don't think so. I think I have a tendency to be this way quite often. I don't really even notice it. But I think there are plenty of times where I fail at it. You know, like we all have our bad days and we're all grouchy online or whatever. And then there are times where you just, I guess it's just natural. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't really have an answer for that.
Sure, sure. No, and honestly, that kind of, I guess, to me, it is an answer that it's just kind of an outpouring of who you are. What It's not a conscious decision you make to share. It's just that's, it cut me, cut you, you bleed help for other people and that sort of thing.
I feel like when I grew up, I had a lot of struggles in school, making friends, fitting in, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, the only thing that I could say was maybe an influence is just that I met a certain group of people in high school who were, I think, what everybody would refer to as like the really dorky nerds. Nobody hung out with them. But when I asked them a question or needed help, I mean, just without hesitation, they didn't care who I was.
Yeah.
And I started hanging out with them. So, I mean, if anything, maybe that influence comes from that group of people who I feel like kind of took me under their wing, and they were like, well, we'll have you here if you don't feel like you fit in anywhere else. We don't care if you're different, or I was different from them. But that's kind of when I guess that during that time period in high school, meeting those people, I had a really great high school experience for the most part, in terms of I felt really comfortable in my own skin, which I think is maybe unusual for people, but it could have just been the people I surrounded myself with.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting how those decisions are maybe sometimes more passive decisions than active ones. That those friends came along at the right time, rather than maybe you seeking out that particular group. Would you say?
Yeah, I don't think I was seeking them out.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you've been doing this a while. I've been doing this a while too, and I share your notion that me helping someone to succeed does not mean that I won't be able to succeed. Right? It's not pie. Them getting help or doing well is not going to mean that I miss out on opportunities necessarily. So I share your notion of sharing information, sharing experience, helping folks out. But I've been a part of many conversations where I've almost been reprimanded for doing that, or like, dude, what are you doing, man? That's ridiculous. You can't do that. That's ruining it for everybody. Have you had that sort of conversation with the dissenters, the detractors, the discouragers, and if so, how have those conversations gone for you? Do you engage? Do you ignore it? What do you say?
I mean, sometimes it makes me really mad, and I'm an opinionated person. So there's maybe been a few times online where I've nailed somebody right back. So I can't say that was in my best interest, but I do have a tendency, I guess, to maybe stick up for the little guy. But I do get a lot of hate mail. Just like I put something out on Photography Awesome Sauce and say, this is how I'm running my business, and it's really different, but it's working for me. I'm getting the same results as other people. And I generally get a lot of hate mail for that kind of stuff, just because people are like, well, how dare you share this? Or, I run my business very non-traditionally, I guess. And a lot of people are like, you're the kind of reason that the photography industry is actually failing, is because of the kind of stuff I'm doing. So I do get hate mail like that, and I just ignore it. I mean,
That a girl. I imagine in certain times it's got to be a difficult
yeah.
impulse or reaction to that.
Yeah, maybe early on in my blogging with photography awesome sauce, maybe it hurt my feelings more, but now I feel like it comes from a certain type of person who it makes them feel better to try and make me feel bad. So if they make me feel bad, if I let it get in, they've only won, whether they see it or not. So, I do screen comments on my blogs because if you don't have anything nice to say, then you don't get to say anything. So if you can't
For sure.
in a positive way or a way that helps other people, I'm just not gonna, I don't have time for it. I don't want to read it. So negativity.
Sure. Sure. So then let me ask you this. If you were talking with a photographer who either was new in the industry or maybe was just new in a new market, had moved from one town to another, what's some advice you would give that person on getting up to speed, on getting their business up to where they're comfortable, or even just making connections?
Ooh, well, advice for making connections. You are a reflection of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So, choose wisely. So if you pick somebody who's, a local photographer, they want to sit down and have coffee all the time and slam everybody else in the industry, that's going to be the kind of attitude that you reflect when you're networking and trying to work with more people. So it can be easy, I think, especially for women to kind of fall into that because it's so natural to us. And sometimes you just need to rant, but there's a fine line between that, so.
I'll speak up for the boys and say that we fall into that trap as well.
Do you?
A little bit. We can get there if we're not careful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just sort of like a human fault. We can all fall into that trap. So you have to try and prepare yourself and just try and pick people who are out there and they're inspiring, they're encouraging. You like what they're doing. You like how they run their business behind the scenes, and you like how they treat their clients. Because those are the kind of people that's just going to rub off on you if you're new or you've moved to a new area. In terms of community, in terms of other advice, I would say my number one piece of advice that I always give out is people are only going to be willing to invest in your business if you are investing in it. So you have to be willing to take some risks. If it looks like you're not investing in your business with marketing, gear upgrades, education, why would you ever expect anybody else to invest in you and pay you for what you do?
That's a good word. That's a good word. Well, and that might actually in part answer my next question. But my next question is specific on the notion of advice to young photographers or starting photographers. Is there a moment, or was there a decision in your business history where that turned a corner for you, or that helped you to arrive at a place where you're like, okay, now this is what I want to be doing. Now I'm finding fulfillment in what I'm doing. I'm happier now because I'm doing this thing and not doing this other thing.
Ooh, probably figuring out who my exact ideal clients was really eye-opening, just because I think owning a business is already incredibly draining. You play 50 million different roles, and you can figure out your time management, you can delegate stuff, but you still might hate what you do if you're not loving the people that you get to work with. And people always talk about ideal clients. It's kind of like a buzzword in the photography industry. And I think it's misused quite often, where people are like, my ideal clients have weddings that look like fill in the blank. But I would hesitate to go that direction with ideal clients and be like, my ideal clients are people who stand for this, believe in this, vote this way, whatever, so that you're recognizing your clients as people. And people whose, I guess, attributes and personalities that you like, that have similar things to yours, you're going to get along with better. They're going to trust you better. You're going to produce better imagery. If you're booking a lot of people that are not similar-minded, I think it's harder to find fulfillment that way.
Cool. Yeah, I take that point for sure. There is one thing that I saw on your website many things I saw on your website that I fell in love with. Not the least of which being your contact form, and its many varied variations. And I'll let our audience here discover that on their own. Go find Carrie Swails, look up the contact form. One of the questions there though jumped out. At first, I'm like, wow, that's bold. I love that. And then secondly, I kind of put myself like in the, how would I react based on the answer that would be given there? And the question was on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being absolutely, how much do you want me to be your photographer? And so my question is not specific to how many people type 15, but more along the lines of, what about the 3s and 4s? Do you see many of those? Do you respond differently to those than you might to others? Do you just not respond at all because they're not bought in?
So I don't ever get anything usually below 7. And usually
Okay.
7s came from before I put my pricing online. And people would write 7, but probably 100 once I know your pricing. So then I started just putting my prices online. And I think really by the time somebody's gone through my website, they've read all about me, they've read my dog bios, they've read, they found the gallery that says "Don't click me" and it's just pictures of my dogs. Then, if they've gone to fill out the contact form, they already know that I'm their ideal photographer. So, if they're filling out the contact form, I've won. I don't get a lot of, I guess, people who go through my website and are like, and I think it's sort of a branding personality thing. The more of myself that I put out there, the more I'm polarizing my audience. So either they're gonna love what they see or hate it. And I would much rather have people feel one way or the other than somewhere in the middle. Because if they're wishy-washy, I'm probably not the photographer for them. I'm not wishy-washy as a person. So,
Yeah, I like to be hot or cold, not lukewarm. I like that. I heard a photographer once describe it as, my website's a filter. Like I want to give them every reason to understand that I might not be the right photographer for them, so that by the time they contacted me, they've already decided they want to hire me. So I guess your website fits that mold perfectly. I think in that it's very in tune with what I perceive, or the intricacies of your personality. So it gives them a good picture of here's what you should expect. If this isn't for you, then thank you. Don't let the door hit you, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So last question, and going back to helping other people in our industry, helping other photographers, younger or older, whatever. What are some common pitfalls that you see businesses or people fall into in our industry that you just look at and go, man, that was easily avoided. That didn't have to happen that way. What are some things that you've seen in your experience that you would advise against?
Maybe a couple things that I see very commonly. I used to do a lot of mentoring, and I would come across kind of like one situation in particular, which is that somebody was still working a full-time job. They had a spouse who's working a full-time job. So financially, they were doing pretty well. They could pay all of their normal bills. But, the photographer was working on business, and they were too afraid to invest or purchase things and take away from their free money that they're using for, eating out or Starbucks or whatever. And so as a result, they weren't getting clients because they weren't investing in their business. And then they were like, well, I've seen this one come up a lot, like, oh, I can't pay for permits to shoot, or I can't pay for my business insurance, or I can't pay for my website anymore because I have no clients this month. And if that's the kind of mindset that you're in, which is that you can only run a business if you are making a certain amount of money per month, you're not going to make it very far. I mean, I started my business by going into debt, and I have zero regrets about it. To me, it was like, if we're going to do this, we're going to go all the way in order for it to work. I didn't go out and buy the fanciest gear or anything right away, but it was like, I need to make sure I have a website. I need to make sure that I'm, getting regular education. I need to make sure that I'm doing regular gear upgrades. And there were months where I made no money and months where I made a lot of money. And if I had let those time periods where I had zero clients slow me down, I wouldn't be in business anymore. So I think that's a big one. I think that people let that hold them back a lot.
Yeah, and that goes with the notion that you said a while ago about people will be more willing to invest in your company when they see that you're investing in your company. Yeah, good word. So that if there are folks on our live view here, or folks that watch this the recording of this, if they're not familiar with the amazing Carrie Swails, can you give us some links, some Instagram handles, some places we can find you online?
Yes, you can find me at carrieswailsphotography.com. That has all my social media. That's my wedding photography. You can find me at photographyawesomesauce.com. That's where I started blogging, as I went full-time as a business owner, I started sharing the things that I've learned, and I'm always changing how I'm doing stuff. So if I discover something new and awesome, it's there. If I change my business model, it's there. And Rock Your Weird, which I just switched out the website. It didn't start out as quite what I wanted it to be. I really love teaching marketing things, and I thought it could be a place where I teach branding and owning yourself, but really most of the time people ask me questions about, how did you get so confident? And so the website is actually going to be transferred over probably within the next week to not focusing on business at all, but just helping people learn how to have some self-compassion. Because I believe we only live life once. So, why would you ever want to do that hating yourself? And we're judgmental as humans already, but we are the most judgmental with ourselves. So if we can be more forgiving with ourselves, that's kind of my path to finding more confidence in my life. Is that I just tend to be more forgiving and thinking, just in general, like, oh, this doesn't matter. So as soon as the website switches over, it has kind of a little bit of a different focus. And then,
sure. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
My last place that I don't know if you realize, I'm a co-owner of madeinthelab.com, which makes templates for Show Up 5 websites. So actually, if you go to carrieswailsphotography.com, that's one of our templates that I've customized, and Rock Your Weird is going to be on one of our templates too.
That's awesome. Very cool. Thank you for that. What you said a minute ago about self-compassion. There was another thing that I saw that I noticed on your Instagram a while back. It was something about what if we spend our time dwelling on the things we loved about ourselves, and like that was all it said. And I was like, that's just the opposite of what a lot of people do, Anyway, yeah. So thank you for being the voice that you are in our little corner of the world. We have a bonus we want to share with you guys today. Carrie she's been doing an Instagram takeover for us this week, and it's been a lot of fun. And she's going to post a final post today, and in that will be a discount code that's valid in the Stomp software store, Blog Stomp, Album Proofer. So check up our Instagram account at Stomp Software. Look for that post from Carrie. Follow along. We do these Instagram takeovers kind of monthly, not really on a structured schedule, but about one a month, maybe two in some months, and we'll have those going through the summer as well. So anyway, it's been Carrie. It's been awesome talking with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me and letting me do this.
Absolutely, and in the immortal words of Captain Jean-Luc Picard as he departed the Shire, may the force be ever in your favor, Harry.
Oh, that's too much.
Bye, guys.